Okay, so let's go ahead and I will call the meeting to order. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's do the roll call. Izzy, you want to start us?
Israel Carey.
Joe Alexander.
Olivia Welterl.
Laura Stevens.
Mark Renard, Village Water Precinct.
Elizabeth DeBrule.
Samantha Kearns.
Rich Gerald.
James Piercy.
Allison DeCesare.
Doug Pounds and Brian Mazier are both excused tonight. Richard Manzo is going to be late. Peter Grigakakis is going to be late. And Jared, I haven't heard anything from Jared. Doug, do you know?
I thought Jack was coming, so.
Okay, so they might show up at some point. Okay, so just a quick reminder, if you're not going to be able to make it, please, you can email Danielle or you can email or text me, and just so we need to have a record though so that you can be excused, because you don't want to have unexcused absences on your tally sheet. Public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? I think everybody here is from the town or the school, so, all right. Then I will close public comment. We are going to start off with a tour of a proposed projects in the 2026 budget for Goffstown High. So we will, if you're watching from home, we will be off camera for a little bit, and then we will re-adjourn or reconvene in here and take up our meeting at that point. So let's go ahead.
Back after the break.
Yes, we'll be back. recording, so we're already on. So we should note that Peter Grigakakis, Richard Manzo have both joined us right after the tour. We do have some information here. Not that one. This one about the doors. If you guys want to look at any of that. I asked them to hold, we're not going to do questions or discussion on this because we don't know what's in this year's budget and what isn't. So there's no point going through this until we know. But we can certainly ask questions and discuss it, any parts of it that show up in this year's budget when we get there. So the next thing on the agenda is approval of minutes. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes that were sent around? Allison?
It looks like Rich Gerald's last name is spelled wrong in the beginning, the roll call. Yeah, it says Richard Carroll.
Oh, I didn't.
I'm assuming that was Richard Gerald.
Okay, so we'll take note, Danielle will take note of that when she does the minutes later, or Derek, if you got that, Rich's name was.
Just on the first, on the roll call at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like it. Any other changes or corrections? Okay, I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second?
Second.
Laura? So Peter made the motion, Laura seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're just going to do it by unanimous. Okay, it's fine.
Abstain.
You're going to abstain?
Yep.
He wasn't there.
He was not there. Okay. Any other, so no no's, no other exemptions, except those. Okay. Moving on, new business. So let's do we don't have a school board rep tonight, so we'll skip that one. But we will turn it over to Richard, since you're here.
Yeah. So just a couple things. We're going to be on Monday holding the last of our own budget meetings. So we'll have the town budget prepared at that point. And the other thing is the final, I guess, missing piece to the puzzle there. We're working on setting a stipend schedule for on-call staff, non-union only. Just working out the specifics of it. There was a proposal to make it based on the employee's hourly rate. We're looking at, I think, leaning towards more of a flat rate and just setting what that will be so that we know for cost planning.
Okay. Any questions on that? What contracts are we looking at this year?
It's Teamsters, is that correct? Just
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
That's it?
And the teachers, right?
Well, I'm the town side.
Oh, yeah.
For the town, it's just DPW, but I know the school has the teacher's contract.
Okay. Okay. Any questions for Richard? All right. I just do have one question I'm going to ask Doug about the school board. Did they approve a budget, the school board?
They did, yeah. So we do have some town school updates as well.
Yeah, you guys have a little liaison here next, so I just wanted to ask as sort of a pseudo school rep there if they did finalize their budget.
Yeah,
So.
the school board has finalized the budget.
Okay, so let's go ahead then and do the liaison update. So if Doug, you want to start, you want to come up here?
Yep. Probably the same.
Sure.
We kind of, when we met, we kind of had the same themes.
They approved the tax rate, so that, just open that up here. So last year, our total tax rate across all four, the municipal, the county, local, and state education was $20.44. It did go up slightly to $20.88. So that's, I think, about a 2.5% increase. Both the school and the town were at or below 2%. The majority of the increase was on the county level, so that was where we actually saw the biggest increase on the tax rate. And that information's posted on the town website under our news releases with all the details for that.
Okay. Questions, Joe?
If I could, the county tax rate's going up 20.44%.
Is there a reason?
That's what the vote was. And there was some personnel stuff at the nursing home, as well as the corrections office, but tax rate's up, 20%. So that's probably what Derek was alluding to there.
Okay. Any questions about any of that? Sam? I can tell you got a question there. You might as well spit it out.
Do we have access to the county land to make like athletic fields, or like, is that something that could even be approached or talked about, or?
Yeah, so lease and sale of county land is very regulated by state law. It has to go through a competitive bid process, has to be approved by the county delegation, which is made up of all the state representatives. So it's a very difficult process. So I would say a long-term solution at the county land for fields or even municipal buildings is a very difficult ask.
Thank you.
What are they building there now? Do you know?
Yeah, so on the second floor, the Bouchard building, that's the main building. If you go in, that's where the county offices are, and Goffstown District Court on the first floor. On the second floor, they're updating some of the space there for the sheriff's office. And then the steel structure that you see, that is the UNH Cooperative Extension. They're building some office and classroom space there.
So the plan to move the men's prison there has not proceeded?
So the county is currently doing a study, a jail needs study at this point, and they have not released the results of that study. And one of the items included in that study was location, whether they look to build at the current location in Manchester or if they look for other locations. But looking at the county commissioners, their meeting minutes, it looks like that report could get released sometime this fall, what the results for that were.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. You want to go ahead?
So the next thing we have on our agenda is just to talk about school care. So whenever something's in the news, we want to make sure that we bring that up in our meetings as well. So school care is one of the New Hampshire companies that offer healthcare services to mainly schools. And in the news, you've seen like hundreds of thousands of dollars of bills that have gone out for last year's expenses. So both the school district and the town does not use school care. So we use Health Trust, I think, use Health Trust as well. So we both
Yes.
use Health Trust. So there's several differences between Health Trust and school care. One is whether they're accessible or not. So school care is an accessible insurance, which means that if they do have a deficit within a year, they're able to recollect that right away. And that's what we're seeing happening to Manchester, to many other towns as well, where they now have a bill which they have to pay for last year. So we use Health Trust, which is non-accessible. So we pay a guaranteed rate for that year. If there are larger than average use of that, then they can assess kind of working back their amounts that they need to build back up to over a multi-year period. So we are in one of those with healthcare. So each of our rates have gone up by 5.2% more due to kind of building that back up. But that's over multiple years where you can see that the school care people are one big chunk at one time. So we are not part of the school or the town as far as the people who are getting those larger bills for school care.
And just to kind of expand on that, the thing that's so difficult with a school or a town, the school district in Londonderry just got a bill for $2 million. They have to take that out of their current budget appropriation. They weren't planning on that. They have to find $2 million in their budget already. So that's why it's so important that we feel We've been working with Health Trust. I know they've been in the news and concerns about their large capital reserves, but there's a reason they have those capital reserves. It's so that when we know what the rate is, we can set it, we can put it into our budget, we can appropriate for it and have it for the whole year and not get a surprise bill and have to cut some type of service in the middle of the year, which, you know, some of these school districts are going to have to figure out what they're doing, so.
Okay. Any questions about that? Do I take it that Health Trust is a little more expensive year after year, but we're paying basically to be protected from these kinds of jumps?
So when we came out of COVID, they returned reserves to the members. So when people were in COVID, they were not going to the doctor, they weren't getting, you know, certain surgeries weren't available to them, so they weren't spending the money. Health Trust returned those reserves to its members, and then all of a sudden we hit 2022, and everybody's going back to the doctor that they've missed for 2 years, and everything spiked. So they are in the middle of a rebuilding those capital reserves that they gave back in 21 and in 20. They're rebuilding those. The school care model and interlocal trust, which is another risk pool that actually went defunct in the spring and was taken over by the state, their model was to have lower capital reserves. So it's really just a little bit different model, but the same idea. So part of our rate is based on building those capital reserves back up.
And school care also returned money during that COVID time as well. So I think it's hard to compare whether one is more expensive than the other because they both have multiple plans. Even within our unions, we have multiple plans that we have through Health Trust. So and Health Trust is also using reinsurance for costs that are like exceeding of like $1 million. So they all use different ways to kind of balance what we end up paying at the end of the day, so.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So the next thing
Oh,
we.
sorry, Peter has a question.
As someone who just has not been caught up on this news, what is the negative news that people have been saying about them regarding their reserves?
So in the spring, there were quite a few press releases from both Health Trust as well as the Secretary of State's office. There was a bill that started on the Senate side that would have changed the amount of reserves that Health Trust could have maintained. And Health Trust basically said, those are not sufficient levels of capital reserves.
Yeah.
And if the legislature moves forward with the Secretary of State's recommendation, we are likely going to choose to cease operations because we don't think it's a responsible thing to do. Fortunately, both the school and the town reached out to our state reps and were able to sit down and meet and communicate our concerns. We met, Joe was one of them. We got to sit down with them and communicate some of our concerns. So when it did get over to the House, some of those concerns did get communicated, and that bill didn't end up moving forward. So, but the way it came out of the Senate, so there were a lot of articles in the Union Leader and a lot of press release from both Health Trusts and the Secretary of State's office that were out there.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
So vacancies, we often bring up, so it's definitely becoming harder to hire teachers. The teachers that we have applying are a lot less, and a lot of them have a lot less experience than we've been able to hire before. With that being said, Goffstown still did well. We're looking for one special ed teacher at the high school now. We're always looking for subs and things like that, but, as far as bringing in the teaching force, we were able to hire even some math teachers at the high school, which math and science are becoming almost impossible to always get a full amount of people hired. So overall, the district did well with that.
Good.
And on the town side, recent support of the CBAs, as well as the non-union compensation plan. We've done very well, especially in fire and police, an area where we've really struggled with. When we present our budget, I'll make sure department heads present exactly how they've done, but I believe our patrol is maybe 1 or 2 away, but they're, currently in background, and fire is one or two away as well. And again, they've got good candidates coming in that they are bringing them on board.
Great. And Town Hall, it seemed like there were things in the pipeline during budget season last year, hires in the pipeline?
Yeah, we still have one current vacancy that I've been kind of holding vacant, but otherwise we completely, we were able to backfill our retirements in our town clerk's office and in our finance department. So our finance is fully staffed, town clerk is fully staffed, IT, land use, everything else, so.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay. Questions about that? Anybody? Okay.
So I think the last thing we had was more just a budget status. I mentioned recently in this meeting that the school board did approve. And then we also just talked about the fact that, we have a teacher warrant article. So they are finishing a 4-year contract this year. The goal is always to have a multi-year contract. So that's our goal, to get that on the warrant as well. I'll talk about it a little bit more in the orientation and ask what people exactly want. But my plan is to send out the information to the Budget Committee tomorrow, and then we meet on Thursday. So Thursday, we will have the overview for the school district, as well as the district expenses, food service, and Glen Lake. And then we come back the next week for the remaining 4 schools.
Similar on the town, we're just a week behind, so the select board, like Selectman Manzo said, will take up the budget, hopefully the final time on Monday. We'll turn around to prepare those budget reports, get them out to Budget Committee members. We also understand that some members prefer to have it as an Excel spreadsheet, so we'll work to get that information to you as well.
Great. Okay, any questions about that? Since they brought it up, the whole thing with the schedule, so we're looking at 2 nights for a school presentations and 2 to 3 for town?
I think we've talked with some of the department heads, and I think we can be a little bit, especially because Adam came in on a completely different night and did an explanation about the road plan. I think we can probably shoot for 2 nights, and then if for some reason there's a lot of questions and you need to push it to a third, we could, but I think we can aim for 2 nights.
Okay, that's great. And then we go straight into deliberations. So that would be nice, because then we could get a chunk of deliberations done before Thanksgiving, really get the ball rolling. But obviously, it's really important that everybody attend this like hardcore block, and we get this done. So hopefully everyone can be there. Okay. Any other updates before we head into orientation? Okay. So if there's no questions, we'll go into the orientation.
You go first? I don't know how you and Danielle. Sorry, I'm pinch hitting tonight, so I don't know. I know Doug and Danielle met and kind of figured out how they wanted to do this, and then we threw them a curveball and sent me instead.
Which is fine, yeah. So as we met too, we talked about maybe next year kind of more combining it, because we both have similar things that happen within a budget, whether that be budget codes or default budgets, similar but a little bit different. So you'll hear, I'll talk about some things, and the town will talk about some things, and I purposely chose not to mention some things, just because the town's talking about it as well, and kind of vice versa. But, the first thing you can see is my email address and my phone number, always available to, kind of correspond through email, through phone call. I definitely appreciate questions, so if people do have questions, definitely give me a call up. So we're kind of at the Goffstown Budget Committee right here. So I kind of run by, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it too much. So a lot of this you'll see came from the BA, Scott Gross before me, and I've updated some slides too, but he did a great job as a BA here for this town. And I want to kind of present in the same way with, that information, which is going to be helpful to you, helpful to the taxpayers, helpful to the community. So the first thing, I'm not going to, the first slide talks about Budget Committee laws. I'm not here to kind of go over them. It's, just kind of pointing out which RSAs that we all kind of look at to kind of help guide us. Next thing is we have some new things that will be both posted when you see kind of postings on the schools or online or on the ballot. So the first one comes from House Bill 1265. And what that has to do is when we post in 3 appropriate places, which one of those will be online, we are also going to post the average cost per pupil, 10 years of that with the data adjusted by the Consumer Price Index, also known as the CPI. We'll also do the same 10 years for the average teacher salary, as well as the administrative salaries in total. And then we will highlight the 4 highest top administrative salaries. So that will be very clear for everyone to see in Goffstown, but also be clear in any town in New Hampshire. And since most people post online, if you were interested in kind of comparing our numbers to other people's numbers, you should be able to find all our information out there. And again, the state also provides other information in regards to cost per pupil, average teacher salary, both historical as well. Another thing that will be new will actually be on the ballot itself, and this has to do with RSA 67120. And on the ballot, we'll have the average cost per pupil for the year before, as well as the school district achievement in regards to proficiency for reading and math on the statewide test. So as people go in to vote on the school ballot, that I believe is the first thing that they will see before any of the warrant articles on that. So I don't know if there's any questions on those.
I guess
I do, yeah. Thank you.
I would ask that when you make presentations to us, if you could include towns, like in making like cost comparisons, because I remember the cost per pupil table.
Yep.
Similar towns with similar citizen population and similar student population. I'm just like, I remember things get highlighted, and I just want to be able to compare kind of directly of what towns have a similar student population and what towns have a similar town population.
In terms of their cost of people
The
or
number
whatever?
of students, or do you mean the
Well, the-
average household income?
The number
or-
of students, and then also towns that have a similar number of residents to them. Because then
Okay.
you figure out this, like, that's this, a town that has similar population should have a similar school size.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, yeah, when we present, we can definitely kind of look to maybe highlight a couple of those. And that presenting would be different than what we're posting, because the posting is definitely very specific.
Yeah, yeah.
To what we need to do. Yeah. All right. So, speaking of the posting, I'll kind of continue to go on. So they did just switch up our webpage. So we were having some problems with some of the PDFs, and you'd fall into the circle trap where you'd keep on seeing the circle kind of spiral and nothing would happen, but we're not seeing that anymore, which is good. So the main goal of the new webpage is to have it be mobile friendly. So if you look at on your phone, it's definitely going to look a lot better than on your computer. Most people do look at it on their phone, but same information on both. And we did the webpage in-house as well. So as you look at it, know that there's going to be some improvements to it, but part of it was to keep the cost down and to get the information that we know that the town wants, the parents want, and the community wants. So part of that is, came from a petition warrant article last year. So that's one of the things that gets updated on a frequent basis. So if you go to our webpage and then you click on finance right there, right in the middle type of thing, there'll be multiple options. One of those is the check registers. So whenever a check register comes out, that also goes on the webpage, as well as the manifest summaries. And then from the state, we're required to put the expense reports and revenue reports for each month, which is a good thing to have out there so people can kind of see where their tax dollars are going to, and then how we are doing with collecting revenue as well. So that's part of our website posting. Next, yep.
Do you have tracking abilities on that to know like how many people are bothering to look at the reports that they asked for and that sort of thing?
That is a good question. We definitely did on our last webpage. I'm assuming we do, because that's kind of always helps you decide where you're going to actually place your information, what's going to be the easiest one to click on. So I would hope we do. So I haven't
I'm
been
just curious.
too involved with the webpage, but they've talked about past amount of clicks, and so they want that information. So I'm assuming we have that.
Okay.
Yeah. So tomorrow, when I send out the information, that will also be available online. it's available right now in the form of what the school board got with the superintendent's budget. So there have been changes that have been made to that. So I've been redoing all of the presentations where they need to be kind of tweaked, as well as the actual budget with actuals. So similar to last year, you'll have an Excel sheet that has budget with actuals, and that goes back to 2023, and then the budget with the notes. So not every line in the budget has a note to it, but there are many lines that do kind of break down. If we're spending, $45,000, what is that $45,000 going to, especially if we're spending something on like electronic information access type of thing. So it just gives, it serves two purposes, really. It helps us as we actually purchase it, kind of knowing how much we said we were going to pay for it, as well as it kind of helps give the town kind of some information as far as like where our schools spending their money now. So also there is just a presentation packet, which includes the slides that we'll go over, as well as some state resources also. So my plan is to send out this information to you, as well as the Excel version. And then as of right now, I was going to print for everybody the budget with actuals, but I didn't know if people wanted more than that. I wanted to ask here first, because whenever you print something 15 or 20 times, it adds up. So everyone will have access to everything, but in your hands, do we want the budget with actuals, or do we want that and something? I want to make sure the budget committee is getting what they need in order to kind of
Okay,
Go
so what do you guys think?
Less paper.
Okay, less paper?
We're specifically saying, like, let's not put actuals on there because those are the not moving target, but those are changing. We can go and pull that up. Is that what you're saying? Like, because we'll be able to access that
So
live.
typically,
Exactly.
yeah, you'll be able to access everything live on a computer, but typically when we're going kind of line by line on the budget, we're looking at the budget with actual. So I want to make sure everyone has a printed copy of that. So if we say we're on like page 5 or reference line 282, that everyone can actually flip to that page, and we're kind of all together, whether people want to be looking at a computer or not. But then there's also like the budget presentation packet, which is like 100 pages. So there's the budget with notes, which is like 70 pages type of thing. So there's a lot of things I can print out, but I don't want to over print out if people don't want me to.
So we used to get that longer 100-page packet, and it like broke out like X number, there are whatever, 100 first graders at Bartlett, and they are using, 100 consumables at $4 a piece. I mean, it broke down, it was like excruciating detail, but if we want that detail, we can have it. Nowadays, last year, we were using just the higher level spreadsheets.
Yeah. So, and you'll still
That's
have
the
that
question.
detail, and the town will still have that detail, because it'll be emailed to you, and it'll be on the town page. So that detail will still be there. It's whether you want to kind of flip through multiple things in
Okay.
person.
Allison, I think you had your hand up, didn't you?
I was just concerned that if we don't get the one with the notes, which I know we've got in the past, that it's just going to result in a lot more questions that might have been answered, but maybe you could tell me if that's true or not? Meaning, when it's, like you said, the $45,000, instead of us saying, okay, well, what's making up this bigger,
Yeah.
we'd be able to look at the notes. But if you don't think that there's an excessive amount of those, then it might be fine, that I don't care about just having that electronically.
I think 2 years ago, we got it with notes.
Yeah.
And last year, we got it without notes. And it was less helpful. I think it was more helpful to get it with notes. Does that feel familiar to anyone?
I was in here 2
I
years
think
ago.
so.
James first, and then Laura. Did you get your chance up, James?
Doug answered my question. I mean, we're getting access to all this. So, I mean, as a new member, is it kosher to sit and work off of a laptop during these presentations so that all the information's accessible? Or is that frowned upon?
People do it. I
Okay.
mean, it's not like, it's not like I'm going to test you, and it's not like being in school. Are
you playing solitaire?
no,
when
I-
you're
I'm
playing
just saying from
solitaire
a-
or something,
from
or
a-
watching a movie.
From a conservation
so-
perspective, I would personally like to just have it digitally and not deal with the
Yeah,
paper.
I mean, I think people should be able to work in whatever sort of medium
Sure.
they are most comfortable with and they would prefer. Laura?
I remember that we got it with the notes, and the notes actually raised a lot of questions that were like kind of unhelpful for our purpose, because they were like internal notes that
Yep.
the describing of kind of like opened up things that didn't matter as much. So then we asked for without the notes. This is what I'm remembering. Because of that, because the notes, we were looking at them and we were like, but what is this? And it didn't really help us. I don't know if
That could be.
someone.
That feels familiar.
So where are we coming down on this? Peter?
I mean, what we had last year was what I was used to in my first term, in terms of like the level of detail, at least printed. So I was comfortable with it, and I didn't know any different. So admittedly, I still need to have, I'm getting a new ruler this year, right?
I think so.
No, I do need to, I do feel like I still need to be able to go through and have my highlighter and my ruler for at least that, but I don't need the level of detail in there if I can just look at that, look that up digitally.
That's kind of where I'm landing too.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing heads nod. So, okay, so is that, we don't need to take a vote on this, for God's sakes, but is that kind of where we're all headed? We'd like to have access to the information, the full information electronically. The printed copy should be what we got last year without the notes. Everybody's cool? Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you. So the next thing I have is the next slide, which is the school district timing. And this is just that kind of reminder that, as we look at the budget, we're really planning for the start of July, which then ends in June, but not the June that we're coming up to, but the following June. So as the administrators at the schools and the teachers sit down, a lot of times they're sitting down this past June for a budget that ends 2 Junes from then. So, they're sitting down and they're kind of deciding on things with, the budget starts in 10 months and then would end 22 months after they've kind of made decisions. Then it goes to the superintendent and, we're kind of making decisions on a budget that starts 9 months from there and ends 21 months. So what that really means is that we're doing our best to project out, a year from at this point. And we do pretty well because a lot of things in schools kind of repeat themselves, but there's no way to be perfect on it as well. It's definitely a challenge for everybody involved with the budget. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that up because people are doing their best to project out, but there's no perfect science to that. So, on the next page, we have fund balance and contingency fund. So this is where there is a little bit of a difference between the school and the town. So we get audited in August by Plotzik and Sanderson. And so that's after our fiscal year ends at the end of June. It's at that point that we get our final fund balance. So once we have our fund balance, that year is over. So there's really no more decisions on what to do with that fund balance other than do you put it towards a contingency fund? So Goffstown voted to have up to 5% in contingency fund. And what that's for is for unanticipated expenses. So if we were, for example, a school care place, that would have been unanticipated, that extra bill, and we could use the contingency fund for that. So last year, no money left the contingency fund. So I don't think any money left the year before. So the goal isn't necessarily to spend from the contingency fund, but it is if something big happens, and instead of impacting the current students too much from that, it gives you another bucket of money to pull from. So once the fund balance is known, either the money goes into that 5% contingency fund, or it's used to offset taxes. So in Goffstown, usually it goes to both. So in this case, this year, the decision was to max out the 5% contingency fund, partly because there's just some more unknown that's going on. Different districts are being hit with different things. Sometimes it's their own making. There are definitely, unfortunately, different districts that are not making always the best choices. But sometimes they're hit with bills which they couldn't have predicted as well. So we want to make sure that Goffstown, if we are hit with a non-kind of projected bill, that we can kind of have status quo and kind of pay the bills as well. So that fund is now at a little over 1.7 million. So the remainder went back to offset taxes. So the projection was that 1.7 would go to offset taxes, and it ended up being a little over 2.5 million. So one of the reasons why the tax rates didn't go up as much was because of that extra additional amount that went to offset taxes. So
Wait, I'm sorry, can we just back up on the math for a minute? And Joe, you had a question.
Yeah, I guess, so what you're saying is that the budget wasn't, we didn't spend 3 million of the budget?
No, because part of that 1.7
Was already in
was
there.
already in the contingency.
Okay, so
fund.
how much of the school district budget
I think it was around,
not spent?
I think you are right about that, 3 million. So it was a little over 3 million. So of a, $55 million budget would be less than 6%.
If I could follow up.
Go ahead.
Are you able to get us a list of like the significant lines that weren't overspent at the end of the year?
Yeah.
Thank you, that'd be great.
Do you know what the interest rate of return is on the money in that fund? I mean, it's got to be in like some kind of savings account.
Yeah, it's just with TD, because we wouldn't necessarily look to have it go to something more high risk. I don't know what it currently is for TD, but we're still experiencing a higher than average interest rate just on our checking account, on our savings account in that. So I'd have to get back to you with the actual percent, so.
So the contingency fund would cap out at somewhere around, what, 2.5 million? It's a $55 million budget?
1.7. So
1.7 is the cap, so it's full?
It's full,
Okay.
yeah.
Is it only on the general fund?
So it's on all the tax dollars that go into education. So that'd be the local education tax as well as the SWEP, because the SWEP is retained the statewide education property tax. So it's 5% of that number.
Oh, it's 5% of the, so it's looking at 5% of basically the revenue number, not the budgeted number.
5% of the taxpayers' money that the
Okay.
taxpayers put towards education.
Okay,
Yeah. So so it's always a changing number each year.
Okay.
With that, so.
okay.
Yeah, so I would agree that the fund balance is larger than would typically be. I can get you a list. Part of that list was healthcare, where before, we didn't get the rate until after the budget was set. And last year, the rate was less than projected type of thing. And then another thing that we talk about with vacancies sometimes is paraprofessionals, not only in Goffstown, but in other districts, not being able to hire all the paraprofessionals. So those, as far as my memory goes, are like the two highest, but I can look on getting a list of that.
Yeah, just because 3 million to me seems like a pretty high number.
It's a lot.
Yep. So, other questions before I move on? All right, so next page talks about school district revenue. So where do we get our money from? You'll see when we do the presentation to you, most of the money comes from the local taxpayers. So most of it's coming from that property tax, whether it be the local education tax or as well as that SWEP or the statewide education property tax. We also get money from state revenues, federal revenues. A lot of that is our grants. We have not really seen any changes in our grants this year compared to previous years. Then there is the adequacy aid, which is a per student amount that we get, as well as an additional amount for certain students who qualify, whether they have a specialized education or whether English language learners or free and reduced lunch. And then we have our fund balance that also. So as we look to match our expenses to our revenues, the last thing that comes in there, we do all our revenues, and then the difference is always made up by the local tax share. So that's what kind of gets decided on how much is the local share of the schools. Questions on revenues? All right, so proposed versus default budget. So this comes from an RSA. I plan on kind of following, obviously, the RSA as well as what's been happening in Goffstown for the last several years. So what that's really looking to do is it's to try to mimic what the most recent budget was, knowing that there are also things that are mandated by law that can be changed up. So some of those things that are mandated by law are IEPs or specialized education. as well as it's looking to, if there was a vote from the town, whether it be a different warrant article vote, that's allowed to go into the default budget as well. If there are any one-time big purchases, then that would be something that we would reduce from the default. Like if we did have our own bus fleets and we bought two buses, two additional buses, we didn't need to keep a cycle going, then that would kind of be reduced from the default budget. So that, we follow the RSA on that. The RSA did not change. There was bills that went forward, but the final bill got vetoed by the governor. So we're still in the same RSA that we've been following for years at this point. So, next one is our fund accounting. So a lot of times what we focus on is our general fund. So that's where most of our operating fund is coming from. That's where the taxpayers' money goes into our general fund. So that's your pencils, that's your teachers, that's your electricity. You'll see on Thursday and Tuesday, it's a lot of things. So that is where the majority of the transaction happens, general fund or Fund 10. Then we go into our food service fund or Fund 21. And that is supposed to, the revenues are supposed to match the expenses. And that does happen within Goffstown. It's becoming harder for that to happen in smaller districts as they divide by less kids type of thing. And but for Goffstown, we, other than some purchases we made, the revenues did meet the expenses, and the purchases came from the fund balance that the food service has on its own type of thing. Then we have the special revenue or the grants fund. So that's, again, we get a certain amount of money in from the state or the federal government, and we can only spend that amount of money. So that's not through taxation as well. And we have capital projects funds. So if we were to do like a bigger expansion or a new building, and we were to bond that, that money would kind of flow through the capital projects fund as well. And then we have our trust fund to kind of keep track of our, in this case, our CRF fund for maintenance. So.
Where does the contingency fund fit in that structure?
So it's kind of looped in with the general fund. It's just kind of sitting there in case, yeah.
Okay.
So the next several slides go together, and then if you flip past them, it does go with our budget codes. So as we look through the budget on Thursday, as people from home kind of follow along, they'll see us saying like 10,000 or something like that. They'll see us saying out sometimes a string of numbers which point in a certain direction. So we want things that point in the directions of teacher salary. We want things that point in the direction of math supplies. So we want to kind of break down our full budget by categories and then by subcategories. And it's the budget codes that allow us to do that. So the first number you see is always a 2-digit number, and that is your fund. So on Thursday, we'll see Fund 10 and Fund 21. So the general fund and Fund 21. So you can see that we're following through a budget code of 10, 305, 1100, 11, 611. So that first 10 is for the general fund. So as we follow that through, the next set of numbers is a 3-digit number, and that is for that's for the location. So that's on the next PowerPoint slide. I think we have a question though.
I'm willing to throw your predecessor under the bus for this one. It's just got a typo in the first one, 21 fund service fund, supposed to be food service fund. Just giving you a heads up. It was probably him that did it.
Yeah. So, I'll let him know about that mistake. So. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
So next page, we're on the location. So we have district as well as each of the schools. So as we follow that through, that 10,000, that in our example, it's 305, which would be a high school account. So general fund high school account now. So if we go to the next page, the next set of numbers is 4 digits, and that is the function. So whether it be regular ed, special ed, facilities, transportation, there's more than that. But in our example, it's 1,100, which is regular education. So general fund at the high school for regular education. Then we move on the next PowerPoint slide to a 2-digit number, and that's for a program. So that might be breaking it down either more into like math or music, social studies, science. Our example breaks it down to math. And then our last number is a 3-digit number, which is 611 in our example. But as you can see, in the 600s, that's for things like supplies, which might be oil, propane, gas, software, but it's also for like calculators, things like that. You can see the hundreds are where we're going to find our salary lines for teachers, paraprofessionals, custodians. So for our example, now we're general fund, we're at the high school, we're regular education, we're math, and then we're supplies. So it could be graph paper, it could be protractors, something along those lines. So that's how they have it broken down. We have been using the same count of the codes in New Hampshire since 1999. They are currently looking at it now, so as we memorize it all now, it could be changed up in the next couple of years. But that's where we are for this year. So as you flip through, you can also see that you have more examples of those budget codes. So as we look through the budget on Thursday, this sheet could be handy as well. The next thing we have is the capital reserve fund history, kind of going back to where the deposits are, as well as where the money has been spent at the schools. You can see at the very bottom, there's those placeholders for the turf field. So every year, we're looking to hold $50,000. So while we finish up the phone district replacement, as well as the middle school core switches, we expect, to be in the trust fund about $228,000, but in our mind, we're using the number $128,000 because $100,000 of that is reserved for the eventual maintenance of the turf field. So good news on some of the projects that happened this summer. The middle school cistern project, on time, on budget. So you don't often hear those words, but so a lot of thanks go to EMC, who we brought in, as well as Randy, who was with us for the tour, our director of facilities, who kept kind of a close watch on that as the summer progressed.
So at the bottom of that page, it says for the 2 turf replacement reserves, July 1st, 2036. Is that a typo, or is that the year you expect to expend?
That is the year they expect to expend.
Okay.
Yep.
How much does it cost to fix the turf field again?
100,000, isn't it? 100,000? 10 years, 50,000? Oh, no.
No, I don't know if it's,
Um,
I think it might be $1 million.
Million,
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
Every 10 years.
Yeah, extra zero.
Wait, but if we're only saving $50,000 every year for 10 years, we're only gonna have
Yeah, we got,
500,000, yeah, that's right, Sam.
which won't be $1 million.
which won't be,
Right, I'm like, that doesn't math.
Between the two of you, we're doing great.
I didn't get elected to the budget committee for nothing from a math skill.
Well, our chairs.
Yeah, I've never claimed to be good at math, so.
so let me check in on that to see if there was a plan to bump it up after a certain amount of years as well, because that would have been before I started. But your math is correct, so let me check in on that.
This isn't on you, but this is why I think that the turf field should be its own separate CRF. It's just an opinion.
Yeah. So on the last page is kind of what we walked through today a little bit, some of the possible potential uses of the capital reserve fund, whether that be with the money we have left over, or with, right now the ask is 300,000, and you could quickly say, well, that still doesn't add up to the 545, and that's why they're called potential, because we're not necessarily planning on checking every box off this year or next year. But we do want to kind of make sure that we keep, there's a lot of square footage to these buildings. We want to maintain the town buildings, as best as we can. So we don't want things going too far without kind of chipping away at some things that are needed at each of the buildings.
Okay, questions?
The doors on this last thing here, is that 120 or is that 130?
So it is 130, so it's, Randy double-checked the doors again today, and by the time I print this off and he had double-checked them, I didn't have time to kind of switch it up. So it is that 130, so, yeah.
And if you guys go forward with that, I would like to know how many doors we're talking about.
Yep.
That pass. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Sure we'll have a lot on Thursday. Derek, you're up.
Yeah, so Danielle, like I said, Danielle worked with Doug to try and dovetail, so we're going to try and not hit the same points from the town side. But on slide 2, you've got a little bit of overview of that we need to gross appropriate. So that we need to put when something's budgeted, we need to put the full appropriation, the full cost of that, even if there's an offsetting revenue. So think of it, when you buy a new vehicle, you may trade in your vehicle. We have to put in the total cost, and then on the revenue side, we have to put in whatever that trade-in value. You're going to see that on one new area due to a change that was in the House Bill 2, the trailer bill. This is a surcharge that's now being charged. It's $3.50 per ton of solid waste that goes to landfills. So that's our tipping and our bulky waste. So a portion of that increase that you're going to see, we have a contractual increase because our landfill contract goes up annually. But there is going to be a portion that you're going to see as an increase due to that $3.50. But 100% of that fee is going to be rebated back to towns. So commercial haulers don't get that back, but when we bring it and we get charged for it, we're going to get the revenue back on that. So that's where we talk about gross appropriations. That's one of the things that you will see that's new this year.
Is that in the bill? That the 100, that we are going to be reimbursed 100%, or is that just a promise?
No, that's, yes, right now, it's 100%, it's in the bill. It was in the law change for that. We haven't seen the rules out of the Department of Environmental Services, so we're not sure how that's going to be administered, what type of submittal we need to give to the state, but we are going to seek 100% of those funds back.
Okay.
On your next slide, again, we cannot spend without an appropriation, and our total appropriation that's part of our budget is really, that bottom line budget is our limit. There are a few exceptions to that. One of the big ones that you'll see if you follow the select board is unanticipated revenues under RSA 3195B. That's when we're able to accept and expend a grant during the year that we didn't necessarily budget for. So those would be potentially on programs that aren't included in the operating budget. But for the most part, everything's got to be in the budget for us to spend those funds throughout the year. As we get into how to read the town budget reports, similar to the school, we do have accounts that are broken down. Primarily what you're going to see from the town is you're going to see our general fund. That's our Fund 10. The Sewer Commission will be presenting the Sewer Enterprise Fund as a separate presentation, and we'll do that later on, probably in December with the water precincts, because they are the governing body for the Enterprise Fund. But, so we'll only be presenting one fund to you. The EMS fund was changed from a special revenue fund, which had to go to town meeting, to a revolving fund, so that no longer comes to you. One of the changes we are making this year is we're going to continue to have departments, but a subcategory under departments but above divisions is our state code. So when you come in January for new members, when you get done all this, your thanks for all your hard work is to come in on a rush in the middle of the week to sign the state mandated budget forms, and we usually have 1 or 2 days to do those and get enough signatures. But there are state codes that break them out for public safety, for administration, for finance. We have actually added those into our budget reports so people can really track how things get from our budget reports to the state mandated DRA forms. So that's a new breakdown that we're going to be providing to you this year.
Does that allow us to compare town to town?
Yes and no. It depends on where certain things are booked. So before 2017, health insurance was in each individual department on the town side. Health insurance for police was in police. Health insurance for fire was in fire. We have moved that all to one insurance line. So towns can do that a little bit differently. So in a general sense, yes, you can compare, but there are going to be some differences on where they book their insurance, if they put it in the insurance department, or if they put it out to the others. And it may be some of those positions that we have at town hall where we have certain people that wear multiple hats. Are you splitting them across two codes or not? So.
And maybe things like utilities and communications, towns might list those differently.
Their costs are most likely in their departments for those, but unless they're running a utility. If they're running a utility, a water utility, electric, something like that, then they would definitely show up in the appropriate column.
Peter?
I think the sense that I'm getting is without doing some legwork and adjusting the numbers, you wouldn't be able to compare directly.
Yeah, I guess it would just, this isn't something you would be able to change, but I think it would be nice to be able to, a lot of times we compare to other towns, and sometimes I think we pick a town that isn't a good comparison. And we say, oh, how come this town can spend so much on the police department and Goffstown's spending this much on the police department? And we're picking a town that is a fraction of the size, right? And this isn't something you would be able to fix, but I guess I just mean at like a state budgeting level to be able to compare to towns that are a similar population size.
Yeah, and I think when the department heads give their presentation, what they try and present to you is the context of, rather than just a simple comparison. But
Right.
I can definitely bring that feedback back to department heads to make sure they really hammer home the context of how they get to those numbers.
Yeah.
So as we move on to slide 5, there are very strict rules on the wording for the budget, how it goes on to the ballot. We do not have any really wiggle room with that. And then we'll just make one note again, in 2025, we separated sewer enterprise fund as one question on the ballot, and the general fund is a separate one. And that was primarily, if the town were to go into default budget, that doesn't necessarily mean the voters want the sewer enterprise fund to be in default budget. So that's why we kind of separated those two things last year. As we continue, there are going to be other items that you're going to see before you that will be separate articles. Capital Reserve Fund deposits, again, it is likely that you will see a capital reserve fund deposit for the fire apparatus fund. That has been the request of the select board. They haven't taken a vote on that yet. The library board of trustees have made a request to establish a capital reserve fund. Again, the select board hasn't voted on that yet. We'll also have a DPW contract, hopefully, a CBA to present to the voters as well. And this would also be if we had any articles that were going to use fund balance to offset collection of taxes. We've had success on the fire apparatus capital reserve fund in the years that we have used fund balance. 2 years ago, we chose not to use fund balance, and that critical capital reserve fund article failed. So it's going to be staff recommendation to select board to use available fund balance to fund that capital reserve fund again this year. So on slide 7, Daniel just has an example. Basically, what we will do throughout is kind of provide you our budget appropriation minus our anticipated revenues to get your net tax impact. That way we can, if you'd like, we can give you what we think the tax rate is going to be as we go throughout. I will kind of give Danielle the attaboy. I think last year during those long nights where We were cutting and working and asking for recess. I think we estimated $7.04. On the town side, it came in at $7.02, which was mostly due to additional meals and rooms revenue that came in from the state. The other thing is, in terms of revenues on the town side, we are very conservative with our revenue estimates. We would love to come in here and say we're getting 10% more in motor vehicles. We would love to do that because it would make it a lot easier. We do not do that. We are very conservative with our revenue estimates. I know there was a lot of discussion about revenue last year. In 2024, we were less than 1% on our revenues for what we actually received versus what we estimated when we went through the budget process. So we are we're trying not to overestimate our revenues, because that would downplay the impact, the tax impact on our budget, and the roosters would come home in the fall when we have to set the tax rate, and that's what we don't want to do. Unassigned fund balance. So unassigned fund balance is not a bucket of money that the town has, but it is completely different than what the schools. It is a balance sheet account that is basically the difference between our assets and liabilities. It is critical for cash flow management. And just so you know, at the end of the year last year, when we had about $9 million in unassigned fund balance, 1.5 of that was uncollected taxes. So again, it shows as an asset on our balance sheet of, we have this money coming to us, but so of that 9 million, you've got, 1/6 of it is uncollected taxes. So it shows as an asset, but it's not money in the bank.
Laura?
Thank you. I think this slide is specifically important, not only for us, but for like the general public, because a lot of questions and concerns, the past however many years I've been paying attention and doing this, a lot of concerns come with this unassigned fund balance. People thinking that it is in fact an amount of money that is held in an account somewhere that we are somehow you are keeping from people, or not, and that is not at all the case. Like, this slide explains that super clearly, and I feel like as the budget season goes on, this is something we may have to reiterate in different ways as people continue to be a little confused, because it is a confusing thing. It's a lot of money and people get concerned, but this is something we can always kind of refer back to these points, I think, when it's brought up, because it is again and again each budget season.
And the other thing I would say is, we do hear a lot of comments that the select board's fund balance policy does retain a significant amount of fund balance. When you compare against other New Hampshire towns, we may, for example, Wyndham, I think, holds on to less than $1 million in fund balance. But they have multiple capital reserve fund and expendable trust funds. They have other ways to help them through some of those, and they're willing to pay the price for tax anticipation notes. Since I've been working with the town, while I haven't always been in the finance side, in 25 years, I don't believe the town has taken out a tax anticipation note. So there may be other towns in New Hampshire that have low fund balance, but that's the choice that their governing bodies have made based on their specific set of circumstances. They may have other mechanisms that we don't currently have available to us. So, again, why do we have fund balance? One of the biggest things that we have recommended our fund balance policy to the town is we have to collect all the property taxes for town operations as well as school and county. So when we send out bills here in another couple of weeks, and they'll be due back, I believe, on December 10th, we have to pay out to the school. So between the state education tax and the school tax, we're collecting $35 million on behalf of the school. And we have a great relationship with the SIU, and we have a schedule of when we're going to make those disbursements that works for both the school as well as when we know our cash flow is going to be working. We have to provide funds to the county. We have to do that by December 17th. That's written into law, that we have to bring them there. I think this year it's going to be almost a $3 million check that we have to bring over to them for their entire operation. So yeah, they're at 2.9 million. So that's really what one of the, I guess, benefits of our current fund balance policy is we have that available cash flow because again, we're only collecting twice a year, and then our motor vehicles is our other biggest revenue that's coming in on a monthly basis.
Peter?
Is it okay if I ask a question of our select rep?
Sure.
Based off of that? So we've discussed this in the past. I want to know if over this past year it's come up at all at select board, that idea of being more CRF heavy versus going towards the unassigned fund balance. Because when I think about it, I think being a town that's focused more on like, we're going to put together a CRF for this and we're focusing on this is more intention-based and forward planning based as opposed to the flexibility. Like it sounds like fund balances allow flexibility, but don't necessarily show intent. Like we are working towards this as a town. This is what we're working towards and we're setting money aside for this. Have you guys discussed that at all in any length this year?
I would say not as a practice. The library in particular is one department that's looking at kind of that type of philosophy, but it's not been a huge topic of discussion at the select board.
Thank you.
Allison?
Didn't we also kind of talk about this last year in respect to it focuses too much on a particular item when you do the CRF? So it doesn't leave the potential for needing the money for other places?
I think that the issue that's always been brought up with CRFs is one year the school had a CRF for Bartlett windows. And the only thing that they could purchase were Bartlett windows. However, the school also has a CRF that allows them to do anything from athletic fields to auditoriums to cisterns to phones, right? Like, and arguably anything in between. So I think the wording of a CRF can be as specific or as vague. It's all in the documents that come from it. And so I would agree with Peter that if making CRFs for specific projects is more helpful than not.
I'm not sure I agree with that, actually. Because, I mean, they are useful for things like, there are so many projects, so many larger projects that are above the normal operating expenses, but they don't, I mean, they're not huge. They're kind of those middle projects. And those are always the things that get cut, and yet they need to get done. And the CRFs give the schools an opportunity to fund those things that are not sexy. They're not, they're not going to like get the parents to turn out, but they got to be done. And I think they have a good use for those kind of middle. I think CRF funds are underused by this town. I mean, I think they're good for those middle range expenses, but I also think they're really good for, as we've seen with the fire department, to save for those huge expenses. So I think there's different kind of funds, and I think they both have really good purposes, and we should be using them more. I mean, towns, I think Danielle told me there are towns that have like 70 CRF funds, and we have barely any.
Right, that
I don't think you guys disagree.
Yeah.
No,
I
yeah,
thought you
that's what I was
disagreed at
saying.
first, and then I was like,
you wouldn't
But you're
make
saying like
a,
that you should only have them for these very specific funds, and I think they do work for a more general fund.
you disagreed on a specific point of her point.
right, so
Okay.
I think a CRF fund for Bartlett windows was a mistake.
Too narrow.
Because it was too narrow. It just had to be used for Bartlett windows. They had a little bit of money left over at the end of it, and we had to do a budget transfer, and I remember we had a 20-minute discussion about it.
Okay.
But I think a CRF fund for DPW vehicles makes a ton of sense, because then we're buying DPW vehicles, this is what we know we're buying, we've got the schedule going, we're good. a CRF for, tires for DPW vehicles is way too narrow.
Right.
You know.
But unfortunately, the thing is, I think the CRF funds have not fared well at the polls when they aren't funded, already funded. I mean, people don't seem to get their utility, and I think before the town can start using them, we're going to have to kind of educate people on how they can actually work to our advantage. Allison?
But how is this relating to the unassigned fund balance that we were discussing? So are you basically thinking that you didn't want to have as high of a number in the unassigned fund balance?
Is that directed?
Yeah, well, you
directly-
kind of started that conversation, I think.
No, it was based a little bit of what Derek said, and what we've had as discussions in the past. I'm not saying where I think we should land. I don't have that information to know where we should land. I really just want to know if the select board is thinking about that, right? That we've had a policy that has said, that has been unassigned fund balance heavy, right? That was relying on that for, large, not necessarily large expenditures, but we're putting, this is like our savings bank, so to speak, right? Whereas a lot of other towns are going in different directions. I said CRS, but the reality is it's not just CRS you could use. We could also be thinking towards bonds more. I'm not trying to place on the select board what you should be thinking of. I just was saying, I like things that seem intentional, that say we have a plan for what we're trying to accomplish. And so that the town can get more on top of it. Like, okay, yes, we're trying, like we've been talking about wanting certain things in our town or whatever. We're saying, yes, we're saving for this specifically for our future.
Laura?
So I think those things aren't mutually exclusive, because this unassigned fund balance is like a bookkeeping tool that is completely separate or can be from other things. Like, we can't help if there's however much of uncollected taxes that needs to be accounted for somewhere. A CRF is totally different. So it's not like one or the other.
Can I respond to that really quickly? So, Derek could actually respond, because I think you already answered it, basically. Right, so another town might just say,
No, and I think I probably erred in inserting capital reserve funds, because unassigned fund balance, it's really your operating a portion of it is your operating cash. And GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, I think you'll see on slide 11, they really recommend that a town or a city that's responsible for collecting all those taxes has 2 months worth of cash in their, and we're actually below that. So we don't, because again, if for some reason we don't get our tax rate set, because this year we were the 5th municipality that set their tax rate, thanks in large part to a school that is very organized and had very good paperwork. But also we have 2 village precincts. We have the Village Water Precinct and we have Grassmere. We're dependent on them for them to have all their paperwork in line, and we start reaching out to them in August as well. If for whatever reason they had some type of issue that could delay our tax collection, we're still having to make disbursements to the school. We're still having to make a disbursement to the county. So yes, I did mention that some others, you got to look at the specifics on why a town has a certain fund balance policy level, but probably shouldn't have brought in capital reserve funds. Yeah.
Is it
Because
more of a
they are
contingency?
different.
But it's also, the unassigned fund balance isn't, like, I know you keep going back to the receivables, and there is a chunk of them, but it is also cash basis too. There
It
is
is.
a cash
Yes.
portion of basically our savings, and so we don't live paycheck to paycheck, because the town has to pay the state and the county no matter what comes in. And this is that buffer to buy time until the taxes come in.
Absolutely.
You don't have it, you're in trouble.
Right, but it's
So there's both.
the bookkeeping of all of it. But yes, there
Correct.
includes cash in there,
Yeah.
because like you said, we have to pay
Right.
bills. That's
Correct.
part of the deal. So
Yeah.
we need to be able to take it from somewhere. Yeah.
But it's also a little bit of a contingency fund as well, right?
Well, there's only 3 ways you can spend it, and it kind of goes through that on page 10. Again, the select board can use it at tax rate setting to stabilize the town portion of the tax rate. They did that in 2020. I believe they did it in 2021 as well. Those were COVID, so they were very sensitive to the residents and the taxpayers during those years, so they did use a little bit to stabilize the town side. If an emergency occurs, and there's a very specific statutory process for that, and then finally, if voters at town meeting vote on that. Again, it's going to be staff's recommendation to the select board to use some of that for the fire apparatus capital reserve fund. We may also recommend other one-time capital purchases on Monday, but again, that's ultimately up to the select board to decide if they want to do that. And then on your final slide, it's just an annual tax effort, kind of broken out since 2011. It's been updated with the most recent information.
Derek, remind me what the blip was in 2018 with the school.
Yeah, they, so the school had retained funds that should have gone back to taxpayers, so there was a one-time where they don't send a check out. What they do is they collect less taxes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, Derek.
Can I go back to one other thing that I forgot on our updates?
Sure.
Monday night, the select board did vote to put our check register detail on the town website, so that's going to be going up shortly. It's called check register detail, but it's not going to have any of the checking account or check number information, but it will have vendors, it will have the GL codes, we'll have a description and everything, so we're going to be posting that with our monthly budget reports as well as our 2026 proposed budget information.
Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, thank you. Thank you both for coming, for helping us with that. Is there any other business? Okay, so I just want to, oh, sorry, Peter. I looked and I missed you.
I didn't want to interrupt Doug's presentation earlier, but I did want to bring up something. I don't know if this is a point of order. I very much agree with Sam's ask where you were, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go read my notes. You had asked about like getting town comparisons, right? I am trying to think, and I just kind of wanted to discuss this as a board, how much we should or should not be individually asking for specific things. And I'm only thinking of that only because we're like a budget committee, and I know that like, in terms of what recommendations, we're supposed to be acting as a committee and not as individuals, right? We don't have any individual authority, we only have the committee authority. And I mean, we're just asking for things, but I'm just wondering if like, again, I agree with that ask. I agreed with Joe had asked something as well for information. Like I agree with the asks. I probably would agree with it if we discussed it. I don't want to make our meetings go long, but I do wonder if we should set that as a precedent, that we're just individually asking for like additional things from our department heads and things.
Anybody have any thoughts on that? Joe?
I think as a member of the budget committee, you should have the right to ask the school administrator anything. I think if the school administrator determines that the ask is, of a significant level, then he will take it probably to a meeting where we can vote on it, but I don't think that that has been a problem yet. And if it does become a problem, I'm sure he'll reach out to the chair and let them know.
I guess specific to my ask is in terms of educating the public when, Derek made a comparison to Wyndham earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the town population of Wyndham or if their school is even comparable. So I could look and say, oh, wow, the town of Wyndham, we spend $55 million for a school budget and Wyndham only spends $40 million. How are they doing that? Why? We should only be spending that much. And in reality, Wyndham is a much smaller town than we are, right? Mm-hmm. And so my thought process is if it, similar to what Joe said, if it became too much, they would let us know. But I guess I would think that people would just Freedom of Information Act if they really want to know it.
Yeah, again, I'm not thinking about the ask specifically, just whether or not we should, like, the way I thought about our role is we discuss something and we ask for things, is what I'm thinking about. Does that make sense? Like, we discuss, like you would say, hey, I really think it would be nice if we had this information. We would discuss it really quickly, or everyone would be like, yeah, no, that sounds good. Yeah, I get that. But then it sounds like it's coming from us. It doesn't sound like it's just coming from Sam.
Yeah.
Does that make
I
sense?
see your point. Allison, did you?
Yeah, but I had something more specific to Samantha's ask, is that seems like a stretch to ask them to now provide us with other towns' comparison reports? Like, I'm guessing that you don't generally pull the information for towns, am I wrong? To compare other school districts? And even like you were just saying, like, going and picking Wyndham, I know it may or may not be, but even comparing how many kids are in Wyndham schools, even if it's the same number of kids, there's, I'm guessing, lots of other things that go into it. So I feel like that may be opening a whole nother kind of worms that is not necessarily factual. Am I wrong in that? Like, do you have
So I think the
comparison
specific
information?
that was asked of me is for the cost per pupil. Can we highlight where we are compared to other towns that are kind of comparable? So the state does give a list of every town that, for cost per pupil type of thing. And so it's easier for say, me and the superintendent to probably say, okay, we're more comparable to these couple of towns based on the population as well as evaluation of the property within the town. So, I was going to pinpoint maybe 3 other towns type of thing that we could probably look at our cost per pupil. Now, sometimes it doesn't matter because you'll see that the cost per pupil for the middle school is the lowest. So it doesn't matter who you compare it to.
Right.
This year, the last time we have data, they're the lowest. So no matter if you compare it to something close to us or not close to us, we're still going to be the lowest. But we can kind of talk about other schools and kind of say, okay, these 3 schools, they roughly have the same amount of students as us, and the town roughly has the same amount of property value as well. So that's how I was going to kind of do it. I wasn't going to kind of do like an in-depth type of research type of thing. It was more like, okay, what are roughly 3 towns? Because, I do want to be responsive to people's questions, and if somebody does have a question that's longer, then I can have a turnaround time. I definitely will speak up at that point, because I think everybody would want me to speak up and to be honest with something like that. But that's how I took her question.
Okay.
The information's kind of there, and the other information is kind of in our brain already as well.
So I'm going to kind of split the baby here and say, I do think everybody should be able to ask questions within reason. So I think we're going to let them go ahead and ask if they want specific information. Again, knowing that they're going to let us know if they think it's a big lift. I think we can, as committee members, we could also point out, hey, wait a minute, I don't know if that's a valid request. And then we can talk about it as a committee. And if it gets excessive, if we feel like people are doing it to slow things down or to be annoying, then we'll have to deal with it. We'll have to deal with it then. My suggestion is for this specific ask, I mean, I do think, I agree with Allison, I think comparing towns is a very, very tricky business. So that's nice of you, Doug, to follow up on this. I would do it like a real estate comparable, where you look at three other towns and that's it.
We often already see that report and where we fall on the list. Like, we see that every year, I want to say, with the whole list of schools, and we're the lowest, always, we're near the bottom. But, so yeah, we see all the information, but if you were just going to pull a few that made the most sense to show us versus the list of every district in New Hampshire.
Right, well, that's why I'm saying, let's just
Yeah.
limit it to a few.
That already exists, that
Yeah.
report. We see it every year.
Okay, does that answer, are you satisfied with that
Yeah, no, I just
answer,
wanted to
Peter?
make sure we're discussing that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We should be conscious of it. And that some of this falls on each of us individually to do our own research with our computers at home. So, okay. Joe,
Motion to adjourn.
do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so moved. One last quick thing. Try and come a little bit early on Thursday because Doug's going to have a lot of information for us. We're going to get our packets, and you might want to have a minute or two to look through that before we start with the presentations. So, okay, see you guys Thursday.
We need to
We didn't vote. Oh, on adjourning? Yeah, we've. Oh, all right, fine. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.